So make sure you smash a like on the video. This is going to be the United Stand player ratings for the season. So let's start off with Onana. I think for a season one, look, I didn't want Onana, I wanted De Gea, and I still believe that if we kept David De Gea and used that £50 million on a centre-back, we'd be in a different position in the league. But we're all geniuses in hindsight. It's not Onana's fault. I think it was a lack of judgment. But I also have sympathy with Ten Hag and the club, and I don't think anybody's ever said this. It's so obvious that Onana for De Gea didn't work. But if we'd had centre-backs, it would have worked a lot better, because we've not even utilised playing out from the back. We've not utilised him as a sweeper keeper. So Onana has been judged on his goalkeeping ability. And I think next season, if we can get that line higher, we'll see him for what he is. So for me, horrific start for Onana. Got better towards the end. I'll give him a generous 6. Could be lower, but I'm happy to give him a 6 because I don't want him to go. And I think we will see a better Onana next season. I don't think he's ever going to be a brilliant shot stopper. I think he'll always be a decent shot stopper. But we need to get the ball playing Onana out that we saw in the Champions League, that we saw at Ajax. And to do that, I'm sorry, mainstream, you're not even intelligent enough to talk about it. We haven't seen the best of Onana because we haven't had the defenders that we need because of the injury crisis. So I'll give him a 6. Wan-Bissaka, I would say a 5 for me, for Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Coming into the season, I felt after last season, he could have been our starting right back. And I just think that there has been a handful of really good performances from Wan-Bissaka, and I thought he played well in the FA Cup final. But the one thing that Wan-Bissaka had last season that took the right back spot from Dalot was this relentless consistency of good performance. And this season, it's been very, in the majority, underperforming. It's almost like he's been distracted. Maybe he thinks he's going to go. So I would give Aaron Wan-Bissaka a 5, and I think it is time for him to move on. But a bit disappointed with him because I think he's a much better player than we've seen this season, and he's almost looked a bit disillusioned at times. Into the centre, Dalot. Dalot this season for me would be my player of the year. I'd give him a strong 8. The fact that he's filled in at left back has been brilliant, but I think he's really adapted to what Erik Ten Hag wants from his fullback. The times that Dalot has played at right back and ended up on the left wing or part of the midfield, he's improved his shooting, he's become a goal threat. His availability has been remarkable as well. He's clearly a player that can play in an Arsenal system, in a Man City system. He's got that ability to do that. And I think that the maturity of Dalot this season, he's really developed into a key leader within the team. So I would give him an 8. Into the centre-backs, I feel that centre-back situation is difficult to call, but I would say that Raphael Varane would be the standout centre-back for me this year, and I would give him a strong 7. I think when he's played, he's been, very, very good, and we saw that in the FA Cup final. He has been at times, he's been the most fit centre-back we've had with Maguire, and I think when he's actually played, he's been really, really important for us. It's a shame we're moving him on, but availability is always going to be the key, and that's been the problem with all of our centre-backs. But I think Varane just gets disrespected by the media, disrespected by external forces. I think he's a fantastic centre-back, and I would give him a 7. In relation to Harry Maguire, I'd give Maguire a 7 as well. I think coming back from last summer where we tried to sell him and he lost the captaincy and his England place was in jeopardy. Remember at the start, I think I'd give Maguire a 7. I'd understand people giving him a 6.5, but I'd give Maguire a 7 because of the journey he's been on. It was at the start of the season when his mum was putting out tweets about him. It was at the start of the season when he was getting picked for England on favouritism. And obviously the captaincy was taken from him. We tried to sell him. And I think he showed immense mental fortitude that some of our players could learn from. Instead of going on Twitter and asking for support or doing an article about this or, building Player FC or whatever you want to call it. And you could aim that at a lot of United players, of course. He's just got his head down and shown real mental strength. The big negative with Maguire is he's been injured a lot. He's actually missed a lot of the season with injury. But when he has played, he's been consistently good, so I'd give him a 7. Lindelof, it's got to be a 4. I do like Lindelof, and I think he's an important 3rd or 4th choice centre-back, but he's not been available enough. I mean, he's not been available enough. I think he must be down with Martinez as the worst available centre-back we've had this season. So I'd give him a 4. Martinez, it's got to be a 3. I mean, he's our best centre-back and he's just not been available. That's not his fault. Having him available for half the season would have put us in a much better position. Fantastic player, Martinez, but you have to have a low mark when you're not available. So I'd give him a 3. It's not his fault. It's not his fault, but we've got to be honest, because I'd give Mason Mount a 1, and that's not his fault either. So, we can't just be favouritism here. If you're not available, you've got to get a low mark. So I'd give him a 3. Johnny Evans, a 7 for me, maybe even a 7.5, because Johnny Evans is a limited centre-back in relation to the future's not there, is he? He's 35. But I think that to come in as a free transfer that nobody really wanted, because we wanted Kim Min-jae or a proper centre-back, to come into the situation, I think the real strength of Johnny Evans has been his understanding of Manchester United. And he was the player on Saturday that came out and said, keep this manager. He understands the football club. He's a fan of the football club. He knows what the football club's all about. He's a legacy player that's been there and seen it all under Sir Alex. And I think, amazingly, he's just done so well for us this season and been absolutely dependable when we've needed him. And also, let's not forget with Johnny Evans a few weeks ago, he was one of the few injured players that went and played against Crystal Palace when he could barely run. So Johnny Evans for me is a 7.5. Standout centre-back, I suppose. Left back Luke Shaw, it's got to be a 3, like Martinez. Massively important player for us, but not available enough. So I would give him a 3. Super player like Martinez, but just not available enough. And that's been very, very disappointing, because I still think he's one of the best left backs in the world. Malacia, it's got to be a 0. I mean, on what planet could you give him anything else? He's just not been available. I mean, God, just on Malacia, a whole 12 months injured. And Ten Hag said he's not even had a training session this year. So it's got to be a 0 for Martinez. We move on. I would just give a notable shout out to Reguilon, who was our best left back this season and hasn't been here since Christmas. I thought actually I probably would have given him a 5. He was quite dependable. He had limitations defensively, but he gave it a go. And I wish we kept him for the season, really. Moving into the midfield, I think Casemiro's got to be a 4 this year. Going from player of the year for me last year to probably the worst interpretation of Casemiro I've ever seen in 10 years. I don't know how much of this is... Look, the thing about Casemiro is he loves football. He's dedicated to football. He studies football. He's educated in football. And I didn't think he was capable of a season like that. So I don't know whether it's injury, lack of interest, motivation, disillusionment, drop off, fell off, whatever. But 4 for Casemiro this year, because the standards are too high. Casemiro on a 6 is still world class. Can't be a 5. The drop off is too big. So I would say a 4 for me. In relation to who else? Amrabat finished the season really well, but across a whole season, you've got to give him a 5, below average. I think Amrabat probably came into the club injured, got injured a few times, went to the AFCON. There's been sprinkling of good performances from Amrabat, but I would give him a 5. You can't say it's been average, because it's been very, very sporadic. Would I keep him? It depends what the alternative is, really. Depends what the alternative is. I wouldn't like to commit either way on Amrabat, because I think that you've still got to pay a bit of money for him, and there might be something out there that's better, but I'd give him a 5. Mason Mount, I'll do very, very quickly. 2. For a first season, for £55 million, to get injured 4 times, was it? 3 or 4 times? You can't. Look, I want Mason Mount to do well, but that's a horrific opening season for him, and I think it has to be a 2. I think it has to be a 2. Scott McTominay, 6.5. 6.5. I mean, you could give him a 7 on the goals, but I watched the games, and, Scott McTominay almost has the Wikipedia line, style of play. If he scores a goal, he makes a difference. If he doesn't score, he does next to nothing. So I think for the goals, and I'll never forget Brentford, 6.5, But beyond the goals, there's not really anything else. And that's not good enough for Man United. We can't start saying this is good enough for Man United. I think 6.5 is probably right. The goals have been good, but behind the goals, there's not really been anything else. Christian Eriksen's got to be a 4. Look, what I will say about Christian Eriksen is, really like him as a player, and I think Andy Carroll finished him. I just think since that injury, he's never been the same. And people talk about Christian Eriksen like he's a flop. He's not a flop. He was a really good signing until that tackle, and he's never got back. He's also not a holding midfielder. Robert McCormack says 13 goals and assists for Scott McTominay. As I said, Robert, 6.5 for the goals, but beyond the goals, there's nothing else there. And also, there's a hidden meaning to his goals as well. A lot of his goals are chaotic, getting in everybody else's way. So I don't think it's a way to build around. I don't think we'll sell him, but I think he's a player you throw on in the last 20 minutes. Tourist season for Eriksen, says X. 4 for Eriksen. I'm trying to think of any other midfielders. Oh, Kobe Mainoo. I mean, the lowest player of the year, Mainoo only played half of the season. So I would give Kobe Mainoo a 9. And people would say, why is he not player of the season? Because he only played for half of the season. But also, I'd give him a 9 because for a breakout season, it's unbelievable. To throw him in, and look, this is where I applaud Kobe Mainoo and I applaud Erik ten Hag. The trust in the player and the trust in the manager for those two is incredible. I mean, he was being thrown in his first few games as a holding midfielder at Goodison Park, at St James's Park, at Anfield. Like, these were his first few games. The winner at Wolves, the goal at Wembley. I think for a breakout season, I don't know what, called up for England. I don't know what more he could do. And people say, calm down, give him an 8. He's not my player of the season, Delo is. But judging his breakout season, of which he only played half and started with a bad injury, it's got to be a 9. How many other players play holding midfielder for Man United and have the season like that, being trusted like that? So it's a 9 for me from Kobe Mainoo. Controversial or not, it shouldn't be. Trying to think of any other midfielders. Oh, Bruno Fernandes. It's difficult with Bruno because I think he's finished the season so well. But I remember 2 months ago saying, is Bruno Fernandes the right number 10 for Man United? And it's interesting because over the last few weeks, he started playing like a number 10 that could play for a top club. But for 3/4 of the season, didn't look, you compare Bruno to Odegaard or Phil Foden, and he isn't a creative. He doesn't look after the ball. But then in the last 3 games, he's completely looked after the ball and shown what he's all about. So for me, I'd give Bruno Fernandes a 7. I think for the majority of the season, and he admitted it as well, he's not been at the level that he can be. But the way he finished the season, his availability, his dedication to the cause, I would give him a 7. Yeah. But just a massively important player for us. And I'm glad that he's shown that in the last few weeks. But it wasn't a great start to the season. And it wasn't a great, I remember what was going on in February and March, and he was getting a lot of criticism. But he's redeemed himself with his qualities again. Onto the wings. Jadon Sancho did start the season 1. Trying to think of anybody else. Ahmad. I'd give Ahmad a 6.5. I think that he's a really good potential player that I hope we're going to keep in the summer. But obviously, because of injury, he's not really been given the opportunities that he should have done. But I'd give him a 6.5 based on the fact that I think there's an interesting player there. I thought he was very, very, very unlucky. Winning the FA Cup final almost hid the fact that he was very unlucky not to be involved in that FA Cup final. Very, very unlucky not to start and very, very unlucky not to be involved. But I'd give him a 6.5, yeah. And there's a multitude of reasons for that. A lot of them aren't to do with him, if we're being honest, injury, etc. And I think also, he's not been helped by the fact that you've got Marcus Rashford, Garnacho, Anthony, who wrongly at times have been picked ahead of him, but you can understand why, based on value, wages, etc., reputation. It's the way it goes, but he's been very patient, and I'd give him a 6.5. Anthony, look, it's a dreadful season for Anthony. It's got to be a 4. I think that the stuff that happened at the start, the accusations, the not being available to play, obviously has a big impact on the player mentally. You know, there's plenty of players out there that talk about mental health, and it's very, very important. But with Anthony, I think he's a player that gets ridiculed and disliked by the British media. And that was a major event at the start of the season. But on the field, it's not been consistent enough. It really hasn't. I think there's been moments, but the majority of the moments haven't been good enough. So I would give him a 4, really. Garnacho for me is an 8. I think not just for the goals he's scored this season, the maturity, the consistency, the availability, the responsibility on a 19-year-old. He started the season as probably a bench player with talent, and he's ended the season as our number 1 winger. I think that there has been burnout, there has been mistakes, there has been petulance that you would expect from a young player. But ultimately, the good massively outweighs the bad. Availability, consistency, commitment, fantastic. And he's only going to get better. So an 8 for me from Garnacho. Rashford, I would give him the same as Casemiro. So I gave Casemiro a 4. Look, Marcus Rashford factually was Player of the Year last year. And I'm not really interested in the interviews or the Instagram stuff or the Belfast stuff, because that muddies the waters. And obviously he's taking a break from social media now, and he was very emotional after the game at Man City. So he needs to go and heal, and coming off social media is a good idea. So criticising him on Belfast and stuff like that, whilst some might say it's valid, I'm not going to judge him on that. I'm going to judge him on the pitch. And when you've got a player that's Player of the Year and has been at this club for so long, he's at a stage of his career now where the responsibility has to be there. You know, we talk about Garnacho's availability, consistency at 19, and then you talk about Marcus Rashford at 26. He's not delivered to the levels he should do. He talks and displays the characteristics of somebody that understands this football club and cares about it. But on the pitch, he's not been able to perform. So I think it has to be a 4. Massively underachieved, massively inconsistent. And it's the decision making. You know, you can blame external forces. You can blame the team around him. You can blame his external brand team around him. You can blame personal reasons. All of those may well be reasons. But on the pitch, his decision-making isn't that of a consistent player at the moment. Shooting from distance, head down, running into players. There is a fundamental problem to the way that he's playing the game at the moment. And, you know, I think a reset, and if I was him, I would get off social media, pigeon now, and I'd spend time watching videos. I'd spend time watching videos of when I played well, when I played bad, and wingers like Anthony Gordon who know when to pass and when not to. I think, unless I forget anybody, Rasmus. Can't think of anybody else other than Periphery and Young. You know, I mean, I'm happy to do a few others, but I think Rasmus is a difficult one. The amount of goals he's scored, I think he's done really well. Being the only striker and the pressure of that, I think he's done really well. It's only his second season playing football, really. Atalanta was a breakout year last year. The pressure has been massive. I think you could give him a 7. I would give him a 7.5, because I think that you think about the Champions League was very, very successful. You think about when the last couple of weeks when he's actually got the ball early, looks very, very good. Again, like Garnacho, the determination, the commitment is there. There's still a lot to learn, but I think for a breakout season, 7.5 in the circumstances is probably about right as far as I'm concerned.
Goldbridge, that's the end of the clip. I'm sure you enjoyed it. In fact, I bet that's the best clip you've ever watched. So there's no reason not to subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon so you never miss a clip again. In fact, smash a like on the video, because we all know only legends like videos, and you are all legends. So please smash a like on the video, and we will see you again on the next one. Thank you very much for watching, as always.